You have to know the sales process and live by that sales process. The sales process has to be somewhat black and white. And then from there, it's rapport and working with your managers at that point in time. You have to be able to build rapport with a customer or you're dead in the water from the giddy up.
Welcome to the Millionaire Car Salesman Podcast, the #1 resource for automotive sales professionals, managers, and owners to learn how to make money, accumulate wealth, and to all out ball out in the auto industry. And now your hosts, Sean V. Bradley and L.A. Williams.
Okay, welcome everybody to the Millionaire Car Salesman Podcast. My name is L.A. Williams and I'm live here with you. And I'm so excited for the guest that we have coming on today because this gentleman has pretty much been with me from the very beginning. When I was young as a trainer, he still brought me into his store to train his people all the way up until recently. I was there training some more of his people. So this guy has seen me grow probably more than anyone outside of Sean himself. So without further ado, I'm going to bring to the microphone my main man, Mr. Jim G. What's happening, Jim?
What's up, LA? Glad to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely, 100%, man. Listen, before we even get started, man, I don't know if I think I saw you in person. I just want to say live on the air, man, thanks for sending us over to the Phillies game. My wife and I, we had a great time. It took her dad. It was amazing. We got to see Bryce Harper. It was cool.
Well, it's funny you say that. I'm glad I could send it to you because I had tickets for probably the first 10, 12 years at Citizens Bank Park. Saw the Phillies win the World Series, then sort of gave them up a few years after. And when they signed Bryce Harper, the next day I went out and bought tickets. So I'm glad you got to use them.
Awesome, man. Thanks so much. So we're big Phillies fans over here, as everybody can tell. If you ain't in the game, I don't know what to tell you. You can just fast forward that part, right? But man, so listen, I'm excited to have you, man. Because you're doing your thing, running RK Chevy. Just talk to the people about your background in the automotive industry. I know you have an amazing story. Just tell people your background in the automotive industry, how you got started, all of that good stuff.
Yeah, so I started as it's funny how it happened. I got out of college. I had a finance degree, started selling life insurance for 2 years, MetLife in South Philly, and then went into business with my college roommate. I wanted to own something, and found out after probably about year and a half, 2 years, that profit doesn't equal cash. So we found out that was only going to be able to support two people. Went back to school at night to Glassboro, which is known as Rowan University. Probably tells everybody how old I am now. I got my accounting degree. Started off as going to sit for the CPA, and a buddy of mine worked for Burns Call Automotive Group and said, "Hey, we're looking for an auditor. Come in and interview." I interviewed. They hired me. Started on my birthday, August 8th, 1991, as an auditor. And I would go around to all our dealerships in the South Jersey area. And then we had an Acura store in Pompano Beach, Florida. And from there, went from an auditing team to a controller's position here at RK. Then the controller's position up at our Burns Honda store, which is a big operation up there in Marlton, New Jersey. They put out probably between 400 and 500 cars a month. Then moved out of the accounting end, got into sales, sold cars for a short period of time, sales manager, and then I went to NADA Dealer Academy. And that really changed everything for me from the standpoint of I got moved around in our company from department to department. I went to parts. I went to service. I stayed in sales. I went back into the accounting office, and I became well-rounded. So once I finished that, I moved out of a sales manager position at our Honda store and went over to become the service manager at our Burns, at the time was a Pontiac GMC, which is now a Burns GMC Buick Hyundai, and learned under some really great people. My brother-in-law, Peter Lanzavecchio, but also a gentleman by the name of John Alizzi taught me service, became the service director there, and probably worked in service for about 3 years. And then a position opened up down here back at RK Chevrolet, which I originally was the controller. I was a controller here. And took the reins here in July of '99 and never looked back.
Wow, that is phenomenal, man. So it's a couple of different nuggets in there that I definitely want to dive into. One of the first things that I heard you say that I've always talked about in being successful in life, period, it's about being well-rounded, right? That's one of the things that for me, I think sets me apart. My mother always wanted to make sure that as a child, forget being a blind child, but as a child, period, I was well-rounded. I was never like, look, because I'm from North Philly, you know what I'm saying? And we know that ain't like the prettiest section of town, right? But she wanted to make sure that we got out. We were, we didn't just operate within our 6-block radius, as my cousin says, you know what I'm saying?
Sure,
So
sure.
being well-rounded is huge. Can you talk a little bit about how that helped you? And then we'll kind of go, about some of the normal questions that I have. How to being well-rounded versus most people who never even know what other aspects of the dealership are doing?
Well, where I'm lucky at is having my accounting background, and our company has a lot of our general managers have accounting backgrounds. So a lot of auto groups, you move within the sales area and you move your way in, but our company believe you have to know where the money is. You have to be able to know financial statements, reports, numbers, and from that, throughout the years, I like to get involved in each department, but I can look at numbers and see where opportunities are, where deficiencies are. But it all started with my accounting background, but I actually got to tap back into my sales background with MetLife. So back then, I walked into selling life insurance and disability and health, and we started off was my manager at the time says, here's the phone book. Here's a couple leads. He did give me a little bit of a book of business if someone left there. And when I ran out of that, I was start down from the phone book. So I was working in South Philadelphia, Kensington, Fishtown, some nice areas, some not nice areas. But I had to drive to people's homes, meet them, try and sell them a product, convince them to take the product. And that, I think, along with my accounting background, really gave a good foundation for the car business from this standpoint is that once I did the accounting end and I had the sales end, I just sort of had to learn how to just figure out how to work with the factory and the dealership and employees in each department at that point in time. Because really managing's managing, it's just knowing the product at that point in time or what you're working with. So that's the foundation that really, I think it was worked for me and helped me get to where I am today.
That's pretty cool. And it's so crazy that you listen, a lot of people don't know this, right? And this type of stuff just happens by accident. So the last 3 people that you heard from, the last week, Brian Kennedy, he had a background in finance. I have a background in finance, right? I carry a life insurance license. And so I do that currently, right? And then, and then you got you, right? So it's just people, I hope y'all don't know, I don't plan this. Like I'm not that good at planning, right? It just happens.
No, I didn't even know that about. I didn't know you had a finance background. I knew you had a background in the music industry, but I just learned something new today.
Yeah, absolutely. I got a life insurance license. My wife's working on her 6 and 63. So yeah, absolutely, man, 100%. So what I want to talk about also is you talked about selling cars, right? So this is the Millionaire Car Salesman podcast. Maybe it's so funny that all these successful people having a background in finance. Don't think that you have to have one, but it does help to be able to, count your money. You got to understand the money. That is key. So just talk about in sales. How many cars did you sell? Like what was your average? How did that work for you?
Well, it was a very short period of time, LA, and I'll be honest with you, it was probably like a 2-month period because when I came out of the office, they knew I had sales experience and they wanted me to get on the desk. And they thought that was more of, they really wanted me on the floor just to sort of get a product knowledge of the account of the Honda product.
Right.
And then they wanted to get me on the desk to work the desk. And I was working at the desk at our Honda store where Saturday I'd be desking 60, 70 deals that day. We had a great team, great bunch of managers, but, obviously everybody has to count on each other, but it was more of a fast track to get me into that desking manager, sales manager's position.
I love it. It makes sense. But now here's the thing. You have some salespeople who say, well, I'd rather be a salesperson because you can't make no money as a manager. What did that do for you from a financial standpoint? The time where you were selling cars and then, what did you moved into the desking side of it? What did that do for you financially? And, just kind of tell the story of what you need to do to make money as a manager. You said 60, 70 deals on a Saturday. That's phenomenal.
Yeah, so I'll be working, the ups, and we try to make all the deals. But as a salesperson, you're what we tell our salespeople here is you have to look at it a little bit like you're your own little business.
Mm-hmm.
As a manager, which I loved, was I felt like I had, at the time, we had 14, 15 salespeople on the floor. I had 14 or 15 little businesses then that I was able to get paid off of, but also help them get paid off of. And I learned quickly a good desk manager and a good sales manager is that manager that knows all the time where their salespersons stay, their sales force stay in terms of their units out for the month. Because if they were 2 units short for a unit bonus or whatever bonuses are out there, you had to work hard and you had to let them know, look, I know where you are and we're going to make you make money. Knowing that if I make them money, I'm making money myself.
Absolutely.
But it also let them know that I cared. So that was one of the things I really tried to know on a daily basis, where each salesperson stood in terms of their units and their gross.
And that's beautiful stuff, because it's so crazy. People do say that all the time. It's like, it's like being in the car business is like running your own business. But then most of the times we never really learn what it means to run our own business. And then we have managers who become managers who don't know how to run one business, let alone 6, 7, 8, 9, 20 different businesses, depending on how many salespeople you got. So, man, you just laid it out there. So what are some of the keys? I mean, I heard you talk about the caring aspect of it. No, some people are like, oh, this is business, right? This doesn't have a place for feelings. I disagree with that. So, I mean, obviously different aspects of it. You do have to, because you're dealing with people. Am I right?
Sure. And the caring part is, look, everyone has to operate under the same basic rules. You have to show up on time. While you're here, you got to work. But it's a little bit like a football coach or a baseball coach. You can't manage everybody the same. You have to know which people you can push a little harder. You may have to sort of console a little bit or sort of advise a little bit, and knowing each person's strong point and weaknesses, while still having basic rules for everybody, helped in the scenario. Again, every salesperson knows it's great when activity's breeding activity and things are working and we're making deals, but then there's that little bad month you have, and you have to let them know, look, if I have a customer referral coming in, I'm going to help you. I'm going to get you going, get some momentum going. But at the same time, you got to bring a referral in yourself. So we'll work. So I give you a referral, you got a referral. Now you got 2. Now the ball's rolling a little bit. I think that's salespeople and sales representatives really appreciate that from a manager.
Nice. That's beautiful stuff. All right. So now here's the thing, Jim. I'm a brand new salesperson. I just got in the game. And, so you're coaching me. What do I need to do? How do I make money? I'm talking about real money in the automotive industry. What do I need to do?
Well, first off, it's going to be training. And from this standpoint, I had said it earlier, sales is sales is sales. It's just knowing the product. So first you got to get the product knowledge. Okay. So you have to know what you're selling. You have to know the sales process and live by that sales process. The sales process has to be somewhat black and white. And then from there, it's rapport and working with your managers at that point in time. You have to be able to build rapport with the customer, or you're dead in the water from the giddy up. But you can build rapport, and then the customer asks you a question about the product knowledge about the car, and you don't know it, well, you just shot yourself in the foot at that point in time too. So there's just not one item, but it's sort of like a 3-legged stool. You have to be able to have strong legs in that scenario of a 3-legged stool. You just can't have one good leg or the stool's going to fall over. You have to be able to have product knowledge, build rapport, training, and the training is sort of piggybacked with your manager at that point in time.
Right. I love it. That's a great way to put it. So people, if you're, studying this thing, he just said, if you're sitting on a 3-legged stool and one of those legs are broken, what's going to happen? You're going to fall. Right. And so your business is like a brand new baby sitting on a 3-legged stool. So the very first leg of the stool that you got to get screwed on nice and tight is training. And that is the relationship between you and your managers, right? Your managers are going to provide training for you. You're going
going to provide training for yourself. So you got to make sure the training leg is strong. Then he said, man, you got to get some product knowledge, right? So you got to know what you're talking about, not just know what you're selling. I sell cars. No, we don't just mean that way. Know it in depth. Kind of, go to, I call it YouTube University. Learn what the customer knows about the product. Check out the red line reviews and those different types of things. And then the last thing you got to have is people skills, right? I just did a sales meeting, Jim, for a sales team. And it was so crazy because I said, okay, what are the things that you need to be successful as a salesperson, right? Because obviously in order to be successful, you just have to, first of all, have the desire, right? And then you got to go out and get the skills needed. So I asked the question, what do you need? Everybody said, oh, people skills. Okay, cool. Well, where do you get people skills? The room got quiet, right? I'm like, that's probably what the challenge is. You know what you need, but you just don't know where to get it from. And so I'm like, there's a simple book called Skills with People. Les Giblin wrote it. Why aren't salespeople just diving into books like that? I mean, why? And then of course, you don't want to be those box of books guys. You got to have some real, rapport. You got to really work with customers, but man, you got to have some people skills.
And I'll tell you a funny story, LA, or an ironic story was, when I first got in the business, I wasn't a great speaker. Being able to get up in front of people. Mm-hmm. I wasn't very good because I didn't have to do it. In accounting, it's not very often you have to do it.
Right.
So I took a Dale Carnegie class. Now I'm going back some time, but it was 16 weeks, and you would have to get up in front of 30, 35 people 2 nights a week. And then they taught you how to public speak, but also they taught you how to introduce yourself to someone, techniques and how to remember people's names. And that sort of set a nice foundation for me too, because once you're confident in terms of speaking in front of people, then that sort of confidence breeds through and people can see this is a confident person talking. So if I'm going to lead a sales team, at some point I'm going to have to get up and speak in front of them. And you don't want to be bumbling and stumbling. So that also lended a nice foundation to be able to train salespeople and other people within the organization, other managers, speak at public events. So that was a helpful class for me.
Absolutely. But here's the challenge, right? Most people don't even think to do the class, or even if they think to, they never do it. So let's talk about that. What was the mindset? What made you say, you know what, I should do this class, and then actually take action and do it?
Well, I think that knowing that I want to be successful, number one, and knowing and trying to be successful, you have to know your strengths and weaknesses of yourself. You have to have, the man in the mirror or the person in the mirror. And I knew this was one of my weaknesses. I knew it. And then I figured, okay, if I'm going to view these 14, 15 salespeople as 14, 15 little businesses, and I'm going to lead them, and I'm going to have to talk in sales meetings and Saturday morning meetings or training meetings, I'm going to really have to work on this weakness. So again, 16 weeks after work. So it was from like 7 to 9:30, twice a week, 16 weeks. It really, really got me confident in speaking. And the basic is that we got up and spoke about things we were expert in, which would be personal stories. So I found out my fear was someone's going to ask me a question that I don't know the answer to. Well, that's what most people fear in public speaking. So they just put you up there and they're like, look, you're just going to speak in front of these people and you're the expert. No one's going to ask you a question you don't know about yourself. So that helped get me over the fear or to sharpen my skills in terms of public speaking. And ever since then, I guess they could say, some of the employees say, I've never shut up since then.
Beautiful stuff. Now, here's the thing. I'm going to ask one more devil's advocate question. Not that this is our audience or anything like that, but, Jim, I can't, that's 7 to 9:30, man, scandals on, man. I got other stuff I got to do. I got, kids, wife, the little whiny stuff. What do you say to conversation like that?
Yeah, well, just say, listen, that's what DVR is for. That's what DVR. Back then, we were taping them on some VHS tapes. So I guess I'm letting everybody know how old I am.
Beautiful, yeah.
But we got that show working. That's what the DVR is for. You can watch that when you get home, then.
Absolutely, man. Or anything else, man. The whole situation is if you got to decide what's more important to you. I mean, and here's the thing, in the long run, so many times we think about the short term. Like nobody's saying that because you have kids, you should ignore your kids. We're not saying that at all. What we're saying is that you got to go out and make a short-term sacrifice, right? The difference between good and great usually is the folks that are willing to sacrifice, right? You might got to get a babysitter for 16 weeks, dadgummit, right? I mean, 16 weeks, your kid's not even going to remember that 16 weeks, but they will remember the extra, couple tens of thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars that you have available for them for vacation, for school, for just quality of life. That's the kind of stuff I'm talking about.
You're absolutely right. And I will say this business, people put a lot of hours in. So it's very helpful if you have a supportive and strong spouse, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, that understands the business, know that you're trying to better yourself to make more money. Because my thing is, when I go on vacation, I work hard. I go on vacation. Then when the kids were younger and they asked for something, the answer is never going to be no. We're on vacation.
Yes.
You want this? You got it. So we worked hard, and everybody is sacrificed on the team here, meaning the family team. That's why vacation time and that quiet time, when you do get to get it with the family, you really get to enjoy yourselves and maybe spend some of that hard-earned money you've been working for.
Absolutely, man. Work hard, play hard. So that's beautiful. All right, so let's talk back about the industry, right? So you're building rapport with customers and things like that. How do you, build this great rapport, but then still maintain growth? What are some of the best practices to make sure that, you're not meaning every single time?
I think the key is your sales process. And we have a road to a sale, and every dealership obviously, or should have a road to the sale in terms of a process. And everyone, I've gotten this questions throughout the years, it's 9 steps ours, and what's the most important step? I always say it's the need discovery sheet. Granted, I know the greeting, you need a good greeting, and each step is just as important, but you really need to know what is the hot button for the customer. You need to know what their buying needs are. So if you have a family, you got a young lady and a young man, a baby there, and they're a young family, well, you're not pulling up the Camaro in front of them. That's obvious. But if you didn't do, obviously, you're going to hope that safety are an issue, miles per gallon are an issue, but also you're also asking those other probing questions. You're trading a car in. Oh, you have a trade-in. Where did you finance that car? That will give you a little bit of clue on their credit. And then knowing those hot buttons, when you do the walk around on that vehicle and take the test drive, you're building value. You're doing nothing but building value in that vehicle. So that when you do go to present numbers, you have a solid selection, you go to present the numbers, you've discussed all their hot buttons and you've hit those hot buttons on the product that you're selling.
Wow, that's huge, man. And I think that people definitely need to hear that. So now I'm going to ask you kind of a twofold question. And this is a question I normally ask. And most of the time we get, similar answers, right? So when it comes to dealing with salespeople, I love how different people explain it different ways. But, I want to ask about the mistakes that you watch people make. However, again, because you are who you are and where you are in the game, I want you to be able to talk about some of the mistakes that either managers or even dealer principals, other DPs, what are some of the mistakes that different people make on different levels that stop them or their team from success?
Well, there's numerous, but I would have to say throughout the years, this one can cross the bridge of salespersons to managers is when we don't make a deal, do we reassess the situation saying, okay, that customer just left here and didn't buy a car. What could we have done better? What did we miss somewhere in the process? Both manager, desk manager, TO manager, salesperson, what do we miss? I always find this in a salesperson that in the very early stages after a customer leaves and they come back over to the desk manager and said, hey, is there anything I could have done better? Yeah. I say that person's on the road to success right there.
Absolutely.
Because they're not making the excuse of, well, they weren't buying today, they weren't doing this, they weren't doing that, or we didn't have the car, or they're going to go shop, or what have you. It was teach me, tell me how not to have that happen again, or minimize those situations or occurrences of that has happened. But I see that both in salespersons and managers.
Absolutely. I always say as soon as the problem becomes external, we've already lost. Right. So we got to internalize the doggone thing. Not that we got to berate ourselves, but we got to say, hey, what could I have done better? Learn from the situation and move on. And then on top of the fact, B-backs close at such a high ratio. So we got to get the folks back in the dealership. So, all right. So talk about it from an even higher perspective. And what do you see, dealer principles and here? So I'm going to kind of just lay some of the stuff that we're talking about, how people look at the numbers incorrectly. And I know this is your field, right? And so they look at the numbers and they go, okay, well, we spent $64,000 on advertising and we sold 100 cars. So that means that, you see what I'm saying? So it's like they do dealer math versus doing real math and understanding where they could put money into to actually increase their numbers. It's not just sales and marketing. So I'm not saying that you need to go down that road, but what are some of the mistakes like that people make that are stopping them from success?
Well, I think that one of the things is that we can look at is just how we're utilizing the CRM. So you could look at strict advertising budget in terms of whether it's traditional TV or radio or what have you, and then you add your e-commerce and your digital, your SEM and your SEO, your e-commerce and third-party leads, and you can put a pencil to paper to have a number and do math. But then if you really look at, okay, I'm also spending money on my CRM, what have we done in terms of marketing, handling customers through our CRM? What are we doing with that information? Because you could tack that on to your expense that nobody really thinks about at all. So our computer systems holds a wealth of data that we could be marketing to. And, I'm big in service where if I get reports back, our email captured for our service customers. And it's crazy, LA. Like I have a manufacturer that says it's a good job at 70% email capture for a service customer. And I said, that's horrible. It should be 95 to 98% email capture because we're now going to be able to market to those people, whether it's through sales, through service, offering, giving service offers, communication. That's how we're going to communicate with our customers. And it's crazy how they can say, well, 70% is a good job at just capturing an email. What about a cell phone? Are they opting into our text messaging? Because we're spending money on that. But if we're not doing that, how are we communicating back and forth in that? So you could take the true dollars and cents of knowing what you're paying the cable company or a digital marketing company, but the number is a lot more than that if you factor in all the other items you're paying for that you're not utilizing.
Absolutely. So here's what I hear you saying, right? Basically, it's the simple fact that what a lot of dealers do is they take the minimums and they make them their standard. Right. Which is just like, oh, my gosh, that's the fastest way to losing. Because a lot of times the OEM may or may not know your specific market, exactly what you got going on. The CRM company doesn't even know exactly how you should use of course, they know how to, they can teach you buttonology, right? They can teach you the buttons to press to do certain things. But what about the thought processes behind it? And so, as the leader, right, we have to put in our own standards. We got to say, OK, hey, listen, that might be OK for them, but over here, we don't accept that, right? It's like the old ceiling has to become the new floor. Like, OK, that's the absolute minimum, but really what we expect is these numbers. Is that what I heard you saying?
Absolutely. And now the new numbers, when you bring two, I'll say cultures together, like the internet department and your traditional sales floor, you have to look at those numbers and you have to have different measuring standards. So what I've noticed over the last, I probably see this over, say, the last 3 or 4 years are our first-time closing rates have gotten better, which now makes your beadbacks even a little bit tougher because there's not as many beadbacks. But why did the closing rates get better? Well, because people are doing more of the research online before they come in. And when they come in, they're ready to buy. So you have those numbers to look at and start measuring. And, we measure everything. And, the old saying is if you can't measure it, then don't do it. But making sure these two cultures come together as one and hoping that your staff is accepting that internet department, knowing that up bus is not pulling up out in front of the dealership. The up bus is your internet department, getting the people in.
Ooh, man, now you open up a whole new can of words. This is awesome. It's my topic, but I love it. So talk to us about that. What is the importance of having an internet department, holding it accountable? How should it be received with the sales department? Talk a little bit about that.
So we found out probably back in, I want to say like 2011, we started off, getting leads and going to some seminars, digital dealer and different things like that, and talking to some e-commerce companies, digital marketing companies. And we started off with just a one-person department, just an appointment center. And we saw how powerful that could be. Then in terms of Chevrolet, a few years later, required every one of their Chevrolet dealers to have an internet department, and they offered a couple companies out there that could do the job. And honestly, that's sort of how we stumbled into Dealer Synergy, from the standpoint of they weren't one of the companies that the manufacturer had suggested. They suggested two of them, but they said you have to have somebody. And I was in a 20 group, and we were asking Sean to come speak in terms of video optimization. He had just come out with the book Googleopoly, but we were bringing him in for video, and he spoke about internet department processes, word tracks, phone tracks, leads, processes in your CRM, and maybe the last 10 minutes he talked about video optimization. But I was expecting one speech, I heard another, and I was blown away. I'm like, that's the company we need to satisfy our internet department. That and this will satisfy General Motors too, is that we need the process that he just put out in that training class. So once we did that and got the training going, we started taking off. But there were stumbling grounds, and there still are. You getting that sales manager that doesn't feel like they have to work or not know what their unsolds are, or that internet director has that customer on the phone. They just can't get them to come in for the appointment, but yet you may have to give some information. He has to be readily available. So there have been some stumbling blocks and things we've overcome, but there's always going to be the next challenge. But I'll call it, for lack of a better term, synergy between the internet department and the traditional sales department has to be there, or you're dead in the water.
Nice. I put the little sound effects in there because that's fire right there. Absolutely on point with that. So, man, I'm telling you, you really are spitting a lot of wisdom. You're giving the folks, stuff that they need to hear. I know you keep talking about age, man, but is there a certain book that you read or something that you would recommend that people dive into to, get more of this stuff?
Well, I started off with Customer for Life, and currently I am reading the Ritz-Carlton book called, let me pull it out of my bag here because I keep this on me for my flights, but it's the Ritz-Carlton Standard, and it tells the history and story of the Ritz-Carlton and the service that they provide their customers. Often I'll speak to our salespeople in reference to customer service. What are our benchmarks when we're a customer? And, the lack of service we get out in the industry, whether we're going out to buy a TV or eating at a restaurant or what have you. But to me, I've had some of the best experiences at a Ritz-Carlton. Yeah. And I tell the story of when I got married, the night prior, we had 20 inches of snow in Philadelphia. Our reception was going to be in Philadelphia at the Ritz-Carlton. And the day of the wedding, my father and I drove over there, dropped the bags off, and I'm literally walking to my room, and I had a chambermaid walk by me and say, "Good morning, Mr. G, and good luck on your big day today, your wedding day." Wow. And I said, "Well, thank you very much." And as I walked away, I realized I had no idea who she was. She had no idea. How did she know me?
How did you know? Yeah.
That's
totally agree.
Knowing your customer. So when that customer comes walking in the showroom, if you can greet them with their first name and their name, that's impressive. Mm-hmm. So we try to use a little bit of what the Ritz-Carlton does in terms of their customer service and just some basic niceties to the customer. Yeah. How are you going to make that customer feel at ease coming into the dealership? Because look, they already have the guard up. The industry at times hasn't had the best reputation, and you have to break through those barriers. But that's what I've been studying on, is how another industry right now provides their customer service.
That's beautiful stuff. And it's crazy because you sound a lot like Shep Hyken. I had him on the podcast and he talked about Ritz-Carlton, right? Stephen Covey has that in his 7 Habits of Highly Effective People book, talking about an experience at the Ritz-Carlton. And so, man, I'm telling you, it is like the industry standard when it comes to top-notch quality customer service. So that's some beautiful stuff.
And LA, what I learned from them is similar to us. It's about process. It's about processes. So you can say, hey, we want to have great customer service, and the Ritz-Carlton can say that. But what they have is the Ritz-Carlton 10 Commandments that each employee has to have on them at all times while they're working. The 10 Commandments, and the first commandment is we are ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen.
That's it.
That is strong stuff. When they have it written down and you have to have it with you at all times, now that's a process.
You know what I'm talking about? Sound like dealers need to listen up. That's some pretty good stuff. Awesome, man. So talk about that. I mean, because I think, like you said, that's a strong process. How do we get that process going? Talk about the aspect of training and how important it is and how often people should train and, just different things like that. What do you recommend people train on?
Everyone's going to say you should train every day. And honestly, the reality is it's hard to train every day to have a manager because, listen, you could have all the greatest, you could come in with the best intentions. I'm training today. You put the key in the door and you could have 3 fires you have to put out right away. Now you're 10 o'clock, salespeople are an hour into this. You really want to get with them right away. So if you can't get with them one-on-one, then you need some sort of training, whether it's video training that they can tap into themselves. So the manager may say, hey, today's training, we're not going to be able to go in the training room, but yet I want you to go online and use the video system to watch these videos. Let's work on some of our weaknesses. Our beatback numbers are down or our selections are down or whatever it is. So it is the daily training with the managers. But in reality, that can't always happen. What's your backup plan?
Yes, that's beautiful, man. Just how you just eloquently laid that out. I never really thought of it that way because people do have those excuses. And, sometimes as a coach, you're like, no excuses, figure it out, such and such and such and such. But you're absolutely right. It's like if folks had a video on demand training, tracking, certification system, then it doesn't have to be that in-person training all the time, right? We can have days where it's like, okay, well, let me just have you go. And then that way, if they have questions, now they can come over to the manager. That's pretty powerful stuff. That's good.
And the other thing we've done too, daily wise, is say, all right, well, look, let's say we have 10 salespeople. We have 3 salespeople that are really having a hard time in getting the customer in off the lot or a selection process. So why don't we take those 3 and keep the 7 doing something else and work hard on those 3? Because if we get those 3 up to snuff, now we're really moving the needle. So we may do that at times, and then we have people all the time in the training. So there's days where everyone trains. There's some days where they're video training. We have an outside trainer coming in that we may get with him too, so to get a different perspective.
Yep. You said it yourself. You got to work on your weaknesses. So that's huge. Awesome, man. All right. So talk about this. What do you absolutely love about the automotive industry? Why is this the industry?
I don't have to wake up in the morning. If you were waking up in the morning and say, oh, geez, I got to go to work. Well, that's a job. That's not a career. Okay. You have to love what you do. And look, that's not always, it's easy to say, but you have to be in something that you love. Look, there's days that are frustrating, but there's never a day that I say, oh my God, I got to go to work, or, oh my God, I got to do this. It's not that way. There is something addictive to the car business, and it doesn't have to be sales. I'm talking service, parts, body shop, what have you. There's something, because there's so many people that are in the business that leave the business, and what do? They come back to the business. All say the same thing. Man, just to say there's something addictive about the car business.
Yes. And I agree that is one of the most tantalizing aspects of the business. It is that way. It's just that it's something that you can't quite put your finger on, but I love what you said. It's addictive. It's like, oh, you got to have it, because I really think it satisfies so many human needs when it comes to competition, when it comes to the desire of, being free and being able to make your own way and all of that great stuff. So, man, I think you're absolutely on it. I love how you laid that out. So just talk to the people. I mean, again, we're talking to the Millionaire Car Salesman podcast listeners. And so these are people who sincerely want to make money. So what is a closing statement that you could have for people who just seriously don't want to live the okay life? They want to live the good life. What would you say to these people?
Well, you have to put your time in. Again, you have to grind it out. If you're sitting there doing nothing, then you're not putting everything you have in it, especially with social media today, especially with cell phones and the cameras. We really find a couple of things that we have found that, and it's always changing. That's another thing about the car business. There's always something new and something changing, but you can go out and know the freshest trades. So if you don't know your freshest trades, your fresh trades that just came in, that you have switched cars to be able to sell used cars, then you're not going to make the money that you're going to really desire if you don't sell new and used cars. You have to know the fresh trade-ins, because from there, you're going to put them out on social media and blast out there. It's the quickest way to reach people nowadays than anything else, where before you'd have to pick up a phone or you'd have to send a letter or take a picture. You could literally take 5 pictures of a trade-in and blast it out, and now every one of your friends out there sees that car that you have.
Yeah.
That in itself, if you're not just doing those basics, you're leaving so much money on the table. And we look at that and we get on our salespeople saying, "Hey, I haven't seen you post anything in a day. I haven't seen you post anything today." And it's crazy how many times the salespeople will all post the same trade. That trade-in will be sold within the next 2 days.
Wow. Huge stuff.
And it's just having your finger. You can sit at your desk and not know anything, but it's the guys and gals that wanted to be able to say, "Hey, how am I going to make money? What did we just take in? What new inventory just came in? What are the programs?" That item nowadays is just an essential to a salesman's toolbox. They have to be doing that.
Awesome. And it's crazy. Basically what I heard you say was it takes time and effort to become an overnight success. You know what I'm saying? Like that's
no free pairs, no free rides.
Really, yeah, absolutely. And it's so crazy. Again, I just did a sales meeting. Well, it wasn't I did a sales meeting, but I also did kind of some 101 training. I did something brand new today, Jim. What I did was I was having trouble getting people to keep their training at a specific dealership. So what I did was I just scheduled time with their GM, and then in the GM's office while I'm live on the Zoom, we had him call each of his, salespeople and all, as if it was like a 101, and instead they got me, right? And so I was training one of them specifically, and he had a guy that said something like, "Well, your website doesn't say that," and he kind of was like, like just teeter-totter. And I'm like, "No, you got to use everything to your advantage." I said, you got to share with him, "Hey, listen, the incentives, I got a secret for you. They actually have been extended until Monday." And if he's like, "Oh, well, your website doesn't reflect that," because it's a secret. That's what I'm calling, right? Little stuff like that, just kind of having fun with the customers. You got to understand that everything that they say and do, I always tell people, one of my word tracks is when people say that they can't find something on the website. Well, listen, our website is roughly about 33% of our inventory. Like there's so much more. And listen, you can get the website, but that's going to give you general information. But if you want somebody who's live, got their feet, boots on the ground, you got somebody like me, which instantly, creates value from the salesperson to the customer. So that's some beautiful stuff. And so let's close out talking about this, because obviously there are some people who are making money in the industry, and we just want to help people to avoid making silly mistakes. Now, obviously you want to have fun with the money, like you talked about. You want to, spend some of the hard-earned money, but what are some things, and not from a financial advisor perspective, I'm not saying that, but what are some things that a person can do or that you've done to ensure yourself future income, or just ensure that you'll never grow broke again?
It's becoming consistent in your daily approach. So it is asking every single customer for referrals.
Yes.
Contacting that customer, whether that customer is $15,000 flipped, has a 400 score, has no money down, what have you, that person gets a call just like the person that had 700 score. Because I'll tell you why, that person that's 15,000 flipped, 400 score, no money down, at some point in time may have money or may have a family member's money, and remember, hey, you know what? That person over at RK was treated me well, followed up with me, no one else has. I want to give my business to them. So
Right.
everybody, it's black and white. Everybody should get the same consistent approach, which is a callback every day, or your approach every day is I'm going to speak to 5 service customers, or I'm going to make sure I get 3 referrals from every sold customer.
Yeah.
It's about consistency. And when you're consistent, you're always putting yourself in a better position to sell another vehicle.
Consistent, systematic, people skills.
Yeah.
Absolutely love it. 100%, man. So listen, that's the message, right? And so you guys have been listening to us. I always say that you are the average of the 5 people who you've been spending the most time with. And just now you've been spending time with Mr. L.A. Williams and Mr. Jim G. And listen, so now it's your opportunity. Go out there and be a millionaire car salesman. Thanks so much, everybody, for listening. Thanks so much for hanging out with us, Jim.
Thanks, LA. Loved it, and we'll talk to you soon.
Peace.
Later.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you like it, you love it, you want more of it, then don't wait for the next money show. Just go to bradleyondemand.com and take your career to the next level.